episode 9 of Denise and Galen Go to Korea. And we're out on the river where all the bikes and people walk for a fun nighttime light show. You can see some of it behind us over there. But this time we're actually going to talk about food.
At last, the episode I'm sure you've all been waiting for, but we can only cover some food.
Yeah, so we've got some categories we're going to talk about today. Starting with the kind of Instagram version of Korea, but it's very real. And it's at open air markets and on the sidewalks and at baseball and we've discovered also soccer games, which is an abundance of fried food.
Yes, it's true. They love it all fried. Pancakes and chickens and
Battered whatever.
and donuts, and they're a fried family here.
Yeah, and we have very much enjoyed crunching on the various fried food options here. And it's, not unlike going to a carnival or a county fair and eating all the fried food. The best part for me, for sure, are the pancakes with bean sprouts or whatever mixed into them. And
seafood.
Yeah, and you can actually sit down and have a meal of the pancakes.
We visited this market that you're seeing pictures of, and it has an actual name, but I personally refer to it as the pancake market because there's stall after stall after stall of these savory pancakes, and they're all delicious.
Yeah, and we already talked about the technological innovation of the fried chicken beer container. We're featuring that again because, like a lot of Korea, they take what everybody does okay and does an even better job of it technologically.
There's also, of course, all the Korean foods that, if you've eaten Korean food in the States, that you've already experienced, but here there's always a little twist to it. One of those being that those little extra side dishes that they give you, there's so many that they're frequently rearranging the entire table in order to fit them all on.
And so we've just, in some ways, just redoing the food that we've had back in the States. I remember like 20 years ago, the first time we went to a soft tofu restaurant with the kids, and that was like a new kind of entree to experience. And the hot bowl with the spicy, and you could always select how spicy it was. And that's a for real thing here, the soft tofu soup. When we go into one of our brownstone restaurants, we order the soup and grilled mackerel, a meal I had many times back in the States. The lady who owns the restaurant, or appears to anyway, doesn't speak any English, but she knows exactly what I'm going to order before I sit down. So she comes and points at the menu and says, "You want this? You want that?" And I nod my head.
And me too.
I'm going to say nay, and that's what we get. But there's all kinds of other things that have been really great, kind of expanding our sense of what Korean food is about.
Yeah. Gimbap is, like a sushirito's sushi roll, and they're very, very accessible everywhere, including in the convenience stores, and they're really yummy, and there's a big variety of things that you can have on the inside.
Yeah, that should have probably been in the street food category, but it's so ubiquitous and part of everything that we have it for lunch today. And the other thing that if you've had Korean food in the States is the grilling. And so grilling beef, grilling pork, or cooking beef or pork on a hot thing, a big hunk of cast iron that's heated up, and you grill the meat yourself. You cut it up with the scissors. You can order fancy beef or not so fancy beef, get all the sides grilled along with it, and then after it's done, you ask for rice to be kind of stir-fried on top of the fat that was there from all the meat, and that's often my favorite part of the meal.
It's yummy, that's true. There's also something you need to learn to drink when you come here called makgeolli, and it's kind of a milky, alcoholic, but
beer-like brew.
Yeah,
but a little sweet.
Pretty hard to describe, but it's delicious.
Yep.
And there's many, many incarnations of it: sweet, not sweet, sweeter, fruity, not fruity.
There's literally $1 a bottle that you can get in any restaurant.
Yep.
But there's the fancier versions of it that taste like all different kinds of things. And one of the better meals we've had was makgeolli with turkey, which I don't think is a kind of native Korean thing. But smoked turkey with makgeolli was really delicious.
It was so good. And it was a makgeolli restaurant, so they had many options and just kept bringing out jugs of it. It was delicious.
Yeah. So that's our summary of the everyday and street foods. We've had a couple of fancy quote-unquote meals that were Korean or kind of Korean fusion. And we'll talk about that some other time. But thanks for tuning in. And Galen's going to muse a little bit if you want to stick around.
Good night.
Bye. for sticking around for a little more Galen teacher musing. Today's Sunday. I spent the morning finishing up quarter grades and comments and all kinds of stuff like that. And I've only got 2 emails back from students wondering about their grades, so everything's normal. But what I wanted to actually talk about was my messing around with AI in the English classroom a little bit, both my own kind of thoughts and anxieties and a little bit from my students. It's been really interesting to have this opportunity in especially my junior class, to have AI be a part of the conversation just because it's a topic that's interesting. And so we're using this as just an example of something to talk about, argue about, write about, analyze how other people write about, as like an argumentative topic. But it's also interesting, at least to me, for its own sake. I think for a lot of people, I asked my students if they found this interesting, and more than half, anyway, quite a bit more than half, said they were interested in the subject itself, not just because it's just something I'm making them do in class. And I've had like 2 moments of anxiety about AI in my classroom. One was my own total screw up, which was a perfect lesson, and I've confessed to everybody who's asked. So I haven't really used AI resources like ChatGPT or Bard to generate teacher stuff very much. So the very first time I thought, oh, you know what? I'll save myself some time and ask AI to get me examples of narrative prose in famous novels written in different points of view. First person, third person, omniscient, third person, limited, omniscient, for those of you who care about that terminology. And rather than finding some books and copying and pasting and labeling, I thought, oh, this is something AI probably could do great. So I just said, do it. And I quickly glanced over it, and it had a sample from Gatsby and Austen and To Kill a Mockingbird. And I thought, okay, that's fine. And I set it up and made copies, digital copies, for my students to take a look at. And my super literary genius kid within 30 seconds said, this is wrong. And I said, how's it wrong? And she pointed out to me that, for example, not the only thing that was wrong, was that somehow it had found, I don't know what, To Kill a Mockingbird text that was actually written in the third person, whereas the book is actually written in the first person. Gatsby was pretty good, but the other sample was also wrong, and she, my genius literary student, deduced that this must have been sucked up from fan fiction or something. Anyway, we all know when we warn students that you should check your AI produced stuff because it can be completely wrong. And I didn't do what I tell my students to do because it was the first time, which I guess you would think I would check the first time. But it was very embarrassing to have to confess that I had violated the first principle. But maybe that was like the perfect teaching moment for students to realize, oh, Mr. Rosenberg completely screwed up. I guess I don't want to do that too. Anyway, so that's just an obvious lesson. But then I was asking my students to read a pretty challenging article printed in the New Yorker. These are my AP juniors, about AI and its possible future. And it's somewhat optimistic about how AI is going to work. And I was asking them to read this pretty challenging article, and then they're going to do the English class stuff of summarizing it and analyzing it a little bit and critiquing the rhetoric and style in an AP language kind of way. And it's pretty challenging work to do. It would take them probably at least an hour between the reading and the writing part of the work. And while they were working on this, I thought, you know what, I'm just going to run this through ChatGPT to see what it would do with the exact same questions. Like, here's this text, give me a summary, analyze its rhetoric and use of style and the kind of argument it constructs. And this time, the AI did a really good job. Like, would have gotten maybe not an A+, because there were things at the analysis that could have been better, but otherwise, in 3.5 seconds, it did a great job. And obviously, my anxiety was, not that I'm not even going to really talk about the whole using AI to cheat topic, but to me, the more interesting one of like, it made me think sitting there in my classroom, do I really need to teach students to do this anymore? Like, what is the point to what I'm doing here if people, these students when they grow up, will never need to do this kind of work? Like, if there's a long, complicated text and a robot can read it and give you a paragraph summary, and analyze it for you satisfactorily, why would anybody do that again? And I asked the students their opinion, and of course they're very, you know, engaged, diligent students who think they're supposed to do what they're supposed to do. And some of them pointed out that they're going to have to take the AP exam, and the AP exam still expects them to do this. So none of them rebelled and said, "Yeah, Mr. Rosenberg, why are you making us do this stuff anymore?" But it is just a micro example of so many things where I really do think we need to look at what we're doing and think about why we're doing it. And at least at this point, even with the somewhat lame argument of, well, making them do this work is good for them to think logically and analytically, and they have to do that, and so here's a way to help them do that argument, which I think is sort of true, but there's certainly less time consuming and challenging ways maybe to ask them to do this. And does everybody need to do it in an English class in this way? I think we're going to have to answer those questions pretty soon for a lot of people. And my gut feeling is not that the answer is going to be, oh, well, the robots will take care of it. We don't need to do this anymore. I think we're going to have to just decide that we think it's good for humans to do this anyway. And I think there's going to be a lot of ways in the classroom and outside of it where work that humans do like this, that's challenging intellectually in different kinds of ways, ask us to think and ask questions. Even if the AI can do it for us well, maybe even better than us, I think we should still just decide we're going to do it anyway. And obviously that's going to call into question lots of ways in which our economy works too, not just the classroom. Because if the corporate overlords decide, you know what, we don't really need humans anymore, everybody's already thinking about that problem. And I think we're just going to have to decide that the teachers in the classroom and the educational leaders and the corporate overlords are going to have to decide there are certain things we want humans to do because it's good for humans to do those things, and we value them as things for humans to do and think about and create and produce. And the work itself is meaningful because work is meaningful. And yeah, the computers can do it great, but thanks, we'll handle it ourselves. Anyway, that's my musings for today, and I appreciate you sticking around.